TikTok, time to rock. Good evening, good morning, good afternoon to everyone who's watching from all over the world. I was just messing with some audio settings right before we went live here, so I wanted to double check because I messed everything up and then tried to fix it. Just mainly want to check right here whether we are speaking at roughly the same audio level. So Robert, go ahead and tell us about yourself, and everyone pay attention to whether he sounds about the same audio level as me, so I can adjust it now at the beginning.
Yes, good evening, David. Welcome to This Week in Jihad. This is the ongoing series that has gripped the world and enlightened millions in regard to the jihad threat that began in the 7th century and continues to this day.
Jihad threat. There is no such thing, Robert. There's no threat.
Yeah.
There's no threat from people going to the gym. Okay.
You're quite right. Although, if you've been to the gym I go to, you might think differently. In any case, the jihad threat this week, interestingly enough, we can start with a little bit of exactly the same kind of sentiment that you were just now enunciating, David. Al-Azhar in Cairo, the foremost authority in the world of Sunni Islam, has called for a new law to confront, that is, to criminalize Islamophobia. And Sheikh Ahmed Al-Tayeb, the Grand Sheikh of Al-Azhar, he has said, we have media and physical capabilities as well as the new satellite channels that enable us to do justice to the religion that is followed by more than 1.5 billion of Muslims. But we care more about other interests that we lack. Up to this moment, he said, we never heard about Christianity phobia, Judaism phobia, Buddhism phobia, or Hinduism phobia. I believe that no newspaper or channel or TV program in the West or the East dares to speak about a phobia of any other religion. And I think, well, that's extraordinary. It's certainly true that there's no talk of Christianophobia or Judaismophobia or Hindu phobia. It's only Islamophobia, but that's because of people such as Al-Tayeb, not in spite of him. And he went on to say, we do not hold the Christian religion, nor Christ, nor Moses responsible for the terrible massacres of Muslims by believers of other religions. We do not label a religion by terrorism, violence, or brutality. We remain deeply aware of the vast differences between religion's teachings and those who practice those religions. Now, yeah, it's a great point until you look at the teachings of Islam. And then you see that unlike Judaism and Christianity and Hinduism, Islam does actually teach warfare and violence against unbelievers. But the Grand Sheikh of Al-Azhar, one of the foremost authorities among Sunni Muslims worldwide, is actually attempting, for reasons of his own, to obfuscate this very important and basic salient fact, and to give the impression that when we speak about jihad terrorism, we're only engaging in Islamophobia and not actually discussing any real phenomenon that is emanating from the reality of jihad terrorism, or the reality of Islamic teachings that call for jihad terrorism. He would prefer we assume that didn't exist. These teachings did not exist.
Yeah, I mean, when any of these guys says, hey, you know, we judge a religion according to its teachings, not according to people who may or may not be misrepresenting those teachings, I say, of course, brilliant plan. Let's look at what your religion teaches. And they say, no, that's Islamophobia. That's Islamophobia.
Yeah.
Hey, check
this. Full press. Yes, sir.
Hey, check out this overachiever here. The achiever writes, I'll hope that Spencer and Wood die in a car crash on their way home. I hope that you learn some basic grammar and learn different uses of and spellings of the word there. But even more importantly, we're both at home. What's that? I'm at home. Robert's at home. So how are we going to die on our way there?
Allah has his ways.
He has ways. All right.
Schemers, David.
What's that?
The best of schemers.
He sure is. He sends like the dumbest people in the world to harass us. Brilliant plan.
Meanwhile, it's a full court press on Islamophobia this week. Saudi Arabia has been complaining that the current structure of the United Nations and its international counterterrorism structure has proved incapable of stemming the phenomenon of stereotyping of Muslims and has been instrumental in triggering a wave of terrorist attacks against Muslims based on Islamophobia. And so I think it's important, I'll seize this opportunity to condemn any and all actual terrorist attacks against Muslims. They are never justified under any circumstances. And stereotyping of Muslims is also wrong. However, at the same time, it must unfortunately once again be said that any discussion of jihad terrorism, this Saudi gentleman would no doubt dismiss as stereotyping of Muslims and Islamophobia. And that is the problem, that by talking about stereotyping Muslims and terrorist attacks against Muslims, he is attempting to divert attention away from the far more common phenomenon of jihad terror attacks by Muslims acting in accord with Islamic texts and teachings. And that Saudi authorities have never addressed.
It's not like everyone on our side of the discussion is stereotyping everyone and lumping everyone together and saying, let's just ignore what their religion actually teaches and just pick a few bad apples and blame everything on their religion. What have we been doing for years? We've been saying, hey, of course you have a diversity of views among Muslims, Muslims living in different parts of the world, having different influences and so on. Let's go to what their prophet and their God say in their texts to see who is accurately reflecting those teachings. And as soon as we do that, they say, they're just lumping everything together and stereotyping. No, we're doing the opposite. It's funny. What they say we should do, you should examine the teachings of the religion to see what they say we should do is exactly what exactly what we do. But then when we do it, they say we're doing the opposite because they don't like the results.
Yep. And so also the Islamic Republic of Iran. Iran's permanent ambassador to the United Nations has warned of growing Islamophobia in the world. Mm-hmm. And he said that this trend has led to the occurrence of limitation of hijab, burning the Quran, insulting religious symbols. He spoke on the International Day of Countering Hate Speech at the United Nations. Now, what the Iranian ambassador was referring to as Islamophobia, he would doubtless lump what we are doing right now into that and call it hate speech. But unfortunately, there is a great deal of jihad terrorism going on in the world, as we will now discuss in detail. And to dismiss all of that as hate speech is reductionist and unjustified on the basis of the simple inundation of all these stories. For example, in Burkina Faso, more or less picked at random, there was the murder of at least 55 people last weekend by Al-Qaeda and the Islamic State. So is it Islamophobia to point out that happened? Is it Islamophobia to deplore it?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And of course, we know the answer. It would be yes. We're not supposed to just even take any notice of such incidents.
And notice, if the UN or whatever government, if I thought for a second they would try to be consistent in their application of any rules about hate speech or something like that, I'd love to just let them take a whirl. Go ahead, take a crack at it. If they want to ban or outlaw hate speech against other groups. Just be, as long as your guys are going to be consistent with it. I'm in favor of letting people say what they want, and unless it's like immediately endangering someone's life or something like that. But apart from that, if the rest of you guys and government leaders and so on want to take a crack at outlawing hate speech or criminalizing hate speech, define what hate speech is, define what it is, tell us exactly what it is, and then go for it. But guess what? Again, be consistent, because if you're going to say, hey, talking about some other group in derogatory terms is hate speech, right, ban the Quran then. Because the Quran calls Jews and Christians the worst of creatures, right? Now that is beyond anything I've ever said about any religious group. That's what the Quran says. So in other words, wherever you set that level and say, hey, anyone who speaks beyond this, that's hate speech and that's criminal and that's got to be banned. Great. Islam, I guarantee you, Islam is gonna surpass that in 57,000 different ways. So what we actually see is, hey, any slight criticism of anything our religion says about you is hate speech and it has to be banned, but our religion could say whatever we feel like about you, and it can call you the worst of creatures and call for violence against you and the violent subjugation of the entire world. Keep your mouth shut about it. And guess what, ladies and gentlemen? That's called hypocrisy. That's called double standards. So come up with some standard and say, here's the line. Can't go beyond that or it's hate speech. Great. I'll live with it, but apply the same reasoning to the Quran. That's all I'm saying.
Speaking of hate speech, David, and double standards, we have an interesting story out of Cleveland, Ohio. And that is the story of a police officer named Ismail Quran. What's that? You saw that?
I saw that one.
Ismail Quran.
No, I actually saw it from you on Twitter.
Oh, well, there you go. Not totally shadow banned, and I appreciate learning that. Ismail Quran was the Police Officer of the Year for the Cleveland Police Department in 2019.
Sounds like a good guy. Great guy, see? His name is Quran. I mean, he's actually named for the Quran, and he's Policeman of the Year. See, this, Robert, right here, is the proof. This is the proof that refutes people like you who try to demonize everyone. This is the refutation. Here you have a devout Muslim who's named after the Quran, and he's so dedicated to treating everyone equally and not hating anyone that he actually becomes Policeman of the Year in an armpit city like Cleveland. So there, I expect your full apology right here.
Well, you're right, David, because the Cleveland Police Department, they said at the ceremony when they gave him the Officer of the Year award, Officer Ismail Quran has truly embodied the community policing philosophy for the Cleveland Division of Police. And it was also said after the controversy broke, the reason why we're talking about him here, the head of the, let me get it here, the head of the Police Patrolmen's Association, Jeff Fulmer, he said, these tweets from Ismail Quran are from over a decade ago. It doesn't represent the amazing police officer that he is. Now, the problem is, over a decade ago, and actually quite more recently, in 2017, 5 years ago, he joined a Facebook group honoring Osama bin Laden. And he has a long record of viciously anti-Semitic statements on Twitter and Instagram. I can't repeat them, actually, because they would involve me saying these things, and then a video can get edited, and they also involve quite a lot of foul language, and I know that This Week in Jihad and its long and illustrious history has always been a family program. So I don't really want to repeat what this man said, but it's clear that he is venomously anti-Semitic. He also posted a photo of Hitler, and this was in praise of and in support of Hitler. And so this Ismail Quran, it's interesting to note, did all this before he was hired as a policeman in Cleveland. And so that raises the question, did the Cleveland Police Department not check his social media because this stuff was all out there up until recently. It was all public. And that would be negligent in the extreme nowadays when people put so much of their lives out on social media. Or did they check it and not care, which would be even worse? And that question has not yet been answered. Also not answered and not even considered is the fact that Ismail Quran's obvious, manifest, vicious anti-Semitism is in line with the Quran's anti-Semitism, the book for which he is named. And yet no one has asked, do any other Muslim policemen on the Cleveland police force or anywhere else, do they harbor the same kind of anti-Semitic sentiments? Nobody dares ask that question because, as you know, David, it would be Islamophobic.
Yeah, I mean, we live in an age where everything you've ever said on Twitter is up for grabs as something that can get you banned or canceled or something. The exception, of course, would be is apparently if you're a Muslim, you can't look into that stuff because it would be Islamophobic. Because then when you go and you find all this anti-Semitic stuff, well, it would be to attack your religion, to criticize anything you're saying. This is kind of an interesting issue because on the one hand, we're both diehard proponents of freedom of speech and so on. But when you share your views, you may be indicating that you're not fit for certain positions, right? If you think Hitler was a great guy because he killed so many Jews, you can't be a police officer, because what happens if you have a lower view of Jews and you want to see them exterminated? Well, you obviously can't perform we can't trust you to perform your job fairly and objectively if you have views like that. Keep in mind, I would say the exact same thing about a police officer who is celebrating deaths of Muslims or something like that, right? Like if you're opposed to the teachings of Muhammad because you think you're bad, great, you can still do a bang up job disagreeing with this, aspects of Islam. If it's actually Muslims and you want to see them exterminated, or Jews and you want to see them exterminated or so on, you can't be in positions of power over other people where you've got a gun and they don't. That's just messed up. But the fact that you can get away with that if you have a certain religion, and you can be calling, celebrating the deaths of millions of one particular group, and not only get that job, but the Twitter scan gets overlooked because it doesn't apply to you. It would be Islamophobic, and then of course you become Officer of the Year. My goodness, this is some wild stuff going on.
Yes, and that's very well said, David. And there's another aspect of it as well. Actually, your distinction was very important that you made, that if somebody is criticizing Islam or the Quran, he may be able to be a bang-up officer, but it would be very different to be calling for violence against Muslims or celebrating such violence or something like that. And actually, a critic of Islam and the Quran would quite possibly make a better police officer, because somebody who, say, rejects the idea that non-Muslims are the most vile of created beings and dislikes the Quran for saying unbelievers are like animals and believes in the equality of dignity of all people. I'd rather have somebody like that as a police officer than somebody who thinks that a certain group of people are vile and like animals. Mm-hmm. And so I'd rather have somebody who dislikes the Quran than somebody who loves the Quran be a police officer. And that would be it, because I want Muslims as well as everybody else to receive equal treatment before the law. And
yeah, I mean, it really seems, I mean, you don't want to discriminate against people based on, lots of different things, but it seems like these would be relevant questions if you're becoming a police officer. How do you interpret this verse of the Quran that calls Jews and Christians the worst of creatures, right? Now, we know there's no sane world where that would actually happen. But I mean, I'd love to see, how do you interpret these commands to Muhammad's claim that he's been commanded to fight people until they say there's no God but Allah? How do you understand that? Have you ever heard that before? Do you think about that? And by the way, we're going to hook you up to a lie detector while we're asking you these questions. And I'm not just saying that about Muslims. If you are part of any group that calls for, where your fundamental texts call for violently subjugating the world or something like that, I think you should be asked some questions before you are put in position of power and you have a gun, and other people might not have one in those situations. One quick comment here, just because so many people are bringing it up. How many days left of this channel? It's very simple. Very simple. July 4th, Independence Day. This channel goes bye-bye. Hope that's clear enough for everyone who's asking. July 4th, Independence Day. Some of you are from places where you don't have Independence Day. July 4th, that's where people in the United States, before it was there, said, you know what, we can't stand these British losers having all this power over us and raising our tea tax and all this stuff. So we're gonna tell them all to that we're happy to take them on. A bunch of farmers and pitchforks took on the most powerful empire in the world and crushed them, ladies and gentlemen. It's what we do. It's what we do. And now we're facing a different kind of thing, and we're going to crush that too. All right, back to you, Robert.
Okay, David. Thank you. Let's see. I can't think of a good segue for that. Now, let's go, to a very strange case out of Israel. Actually, it was out of Gaza, which is a land ruled by Hamas, and Israel has actually no presence there whatsoever. But an Israeli court has found this past week, just a few days ago, the former chief of World Vision in Gaza. Now, World Vision is a Christian charity, but the chief of World Vision in Gaza was a gentleman named Mohammed al-Halabi. And Mohammed al-Halabi is, of course, a Muslim who ended up funneling money from World Vision, millions of dollars worth, to Hamas, and was thus convicted of embezzling funds. And I saw this story, I thought, isn't that strange that World Vision, a Christian charity operating in Gaza, would appoint a Muslim to be its head? But no doubt the people who were running World Vision thought, well, Islam is a religion of peace, and here's a good fellow who believes in what we're doing, and so he will help us in Gaza. And never would have dreamed of questioning him, like you were talking about, questioning prospective police officers. And here again, it's not just about Islam. If anybody who is, you have a Christian charity here, if you had a Buddhist charity, a Hindu charity, a Jewish charity, we work the same way. Anybody in the group or outside the group who wants to be employed, they ought to be investigated and vetted to see if they share the interests and the priorities and the goals of the organization. Now, in this case, no doubt, that was done very lightly and delicately for fear of being accused of Islamophobia. And so we get this situation.
This should actually be an issue that is brought to the front much more frequently, because, I mean, you can see the impact of making people scared of bringing up certain issues or of asking certain questions. I mean, worst case that I can think of is the grooming gangs in the UK. So for decades, these grooming gangs were targeting young girls based on the girls not being Muslims, grooming them, raping them, gang raping them, drugging them, pimping them, getting away with it with thousands of, I mean, you're talking thousands of girls in one city, let alone, across the UK. This was going on for decades, all because everyone in any position of power to do anything about it was terrified of being called an Islamophobe, so they wouldn't say anything about it. And then you see similar things. You can have a guy who celebrates Hitler becoming officer of the year because no one's willing to say, hey, wait a minute. You can have organizations allowing people to funnel millions of dollars to terrorist organizations because everyone's terrified of saying, someone's going to call me an Islamophobe. Everyone's just in a state of terror and fear. It seems like it has to be something that is collectively brought to the surface and say, guys, we don't mean anything particular about this against you if you happen to be a perfectly law-abiding, reasonable person who isn't trying to subjugate the entire world. But we have to ask these kinds of things because not asking them has led to, gang raping thousands of little girls and so on. We can't allow these things to keep happening. So we just have to ask these difficult questions here for you. And so, especially before we start handing you millions of dollars, we're going to ask some questions, right? I mean, think about that. Who hands millions of dollars to someone who doesn't want to? Well, I trust you because otherwise I'll be called an Islamophobe. Like, who does that? No one ever gives me millions of dollars and says, well, here you go, David.
Yeah, I think actually in line with that story that the Council on American Islamic Relations should give us millions of dollars to handle.
Yeah.
And
yeah, CARE.
We can care before.
Yeah, CARE. Where's the millions of dollars? Give it to us. We'll take care of it.
Ibrahim Hooper, give me a call. We'll make the arrangements. Anyway, another story like that, or maybe possibly like that, I should say, is out of New York City. Subhan Zaib, 26 years old, went on a total crime spree in New York City, targeting women. He stabbed one woman. Where did he stab her, David?
I have no familiarity with this story, but I'm guessing somewhere in here.
You were correct, sir. I don't know how you do it.
Profit.
Every time you guess right. It's astonishing. In any case, he beat another woman. He threatened to kill his ex-girlfriend. Then, after all this, he fled to Baltimore where he raped a woman. What's noteworthy about the story is that he was actually arrested 5 times in New York after each one of these incidents and some others, and released every time with no conditions, no bail. Now, why is that? It may be because the system is totally breaking down in New York City. They're not prosecuting all manner of crimes. You really have to do something very serious to get prosecuted nowadays in New York City. And maybe that's all there is to it. But it did occur to me, given the fact that he stabs one woman in the neck, that he rapes another, when we have abundant evidence of the rape gangs in the UK and the rapes by Muslim migrants all over Europe, abundant evidence that many Muslims, here again, not every last one, but many Muslims do believe that infidel women are essentially theirs for the taking after the manner of the captives of the right hand mentioned in the Quran, that he gets released. Is it because New York authorities were afraid of being called Islamophobic? I don't know, but I don't think it can be discounted as a possibility nowadays.
No, you can't. There's nothing you can put past the government and the police at this point. In fact, if this guy had stabbed a woman in the neck and I'd been there to clock the dude and stop him, I think there's a bigger chance that I would be in jail than that dude. It would be
right.
How dare you hit that guy who's stabbing a woman? Now you have to go to jail on this hate crime charge. It's hate.
That's right.
It's Islamophobic.
It's also racist.
Yeah, it's racist and Islamophobic to stop a guy from just carrying out his religion.
There you go.
Wow.
So another case that's actually similar to that, involving idiotic officials, that is, involves Nupur Sharma, whom we discussed 2 weeks ago. And she is, of course, the Hindu spokesman, former spokesman for the ruling BJP. And she was suspended from the party after saying that Muhammad had married a 6-year-old, consummated the marriage when she was 9. And there have been riots all over India in rage at her alleged blasphemy, despite the fact that what she said was entirely accurate. And this week, a Saudi scholar, Asim al-Hakim, was asked on Twitter, Salam alaikum, Sheikh Asim al-Hakim. It has been said in India that Prophet Muhammad married Aisha at the age of 6 and consummated the marriage at the age of 9. Is it true? Please clarify. And Asim al-Hakim said, it is 100% true. And that was interesting to note because at the same time, the U.S. State Department spokesman Ned Price said, we've condemned the offensive comments made by 2 BJP functionaries, and we were glad to see that the party publicly condemned their statements. And so we have this idiotic American official speaking for the United States government, condemning statements that were entirely true and accurate, and that were affirmed as such at the same time by a Saudi Muslim cleric.
And that are all over the Muslim sources. But for those who don't know who Sheikh Asim al-Hakim is, he's got 598,000 subscribers on YouTube. So, I mean, he shares this stuff on YouTube. And by the way, Robert, Sheikh Asim, he's got a video where he's explaining jihad. And interestingly, he explains it in exactly the way we explain it. Right? Like, hey, if you're not strong enough to fight, then you just mind your own business, focus on building up your community. And, you know, if you can fight defensively in certain situations and you do that and focus on strengthening the community for the day when we can go door to door. This is the same guy who said we'll eventually go door to door. It may take 50 years, but we will go door to door. We'll knock and we'll give you 3 options. You either convert. If you do, we leave you alone. Or you pay jizya. If you do, you pay your jizya. We leave you alone. Or that's what he said. He goes, or
how could this be? Has he been reading Islamophobic literature?
No, it's just amazing that he can actually say that. I mean, he can be announcing. So, I mean, just think about this. Ali Dawah is fine saying that he's working towards building a community where ex-Muslims will be executed. And he's fine saying that. He's calling for the deaths of millions of people. That's fine on YouTube. Sheikh Asim al-Hakim is saying, hey guys, we're too weak right now to subjugate all these people. Focus on strengthening the community, building up the community and so on. And then in a few decades, when we're stronger, then we go door to door and we give people the option, convert, pay us, or die. That's fine on YouTube. But if I point out what they're saying, I'm the bad guy. I'm the one engaging in hate speech. If I say, hey, look what this guy said. He's calling for the deaths of millions of people. He's calling for the deaths of millions of people and for the violent subjugation of the world. YouTube says, shame on you. We're banning you for a week for pointing out what these guys are saying. Interesting. But notice it's the same principle that you see in the Nupur Sharma case, right? It's, hey, what you're saying, Nupur Sharma, is completely true, but you're not allowed to say it because you're not saying it and approving of it. If you were saying it and approving of it, you're fine. But if you're pointing out jihad or pedophilia or anything else like that, and you disapprove of it, you have to be silenced. You're evil.
Quite so, David. Quite so. And there's quite a lot of idiotic officials this week. As a matter of fact, a lot of the idiotic official stories come from the fact that the Islamophobia business has gotten such traction and officials are afraid to condemn it. But there have also been some cracks in the edifice. That is, officials who have betrayed that they understand more than you might have expected, and also some cracks in the alliance, the global alliance between the international left, which has generally embraced the whole Islamophobia business, and Islamic groups. For example, this is, of course, what is it called? Pride Month? I'm sorry, I should know this. It's called Pride Month, right? It's not called Gay Month.
Yeah, it's called Pride Month. Where you been?
Sorry. North Carolina, actually, but I'm back now. The issue is that it's Pride Month, and of course, the Islamic groups in the West are allies of the left all over the West, and the left considers them to be an integral part of the alliance. But there's some strain on this. In Turkey, Muslims screaming Allahu Akbar. Oh, I should have asked you what they were screaming, but I bet you would have guessed it.
That's what that would have been my first guess.
They forced cancellation of the Pride picnic in Istanbul at Istan University Beyazıt campus. And an LGBT party was also called off in Ramallah after they got death threats from Palestinians, which is interesting because I remember seeing signs, queers for Palestine and all that, and yet this kind of thing doesn't really go over very well in certain Islamic states. So this is something I think that the left, who considers Islam to be, they consider Islam in a far more favorable light than they do Christianity, they have no framework to understand this kind of thing. And in a similar vein, similar and related, is a very interesting case out of San Jose, California, where the mayor actually, was it the mayor? Let me go back, make sure I have this right. Yes, Mayor Sam Liccardo planned a trip to Qatar, but the city council, it was going to be a state or city-funded trip, an official city visit to Doha, and the city council voted it down 8-3 and noted Sharia misogyny, Sharia provisions against women, as the reason why they didn't think that the mayor should go to Qatar on the city's dime. And CARE is enraged and has called upon the city council to condemn the Islamophobic rhetoric in which they were engaged. And I can imagine how absolutely stunned Zahra Bilou of the San Francisco chapter of CARE and others must have been when San Jose started speaking about Sharia being bad for women, when they thought that they had gotten all the feminists to affirm that Sharia is wonderful for women. And yet here's the San Jose City Council in an area where they must be very afraid of Islamophobia, and they actually behave as if there's something wrong with Sharia. So I don't know maybe something's gotten into the water there or something.
This, what you're talking about, is happening a lot recently. Did you see the Ilhan Omar? Did you see the Ilhan Omar thing?
Right, that was a few weeks ago, wasn't it? She wished wished everyone a happy Pride Month, and then Muhammad Hijab and others were very upset with her, and asking if she was even a Muslim at all.
What's interesting is you can read the comments from Muslims. They're almost all on, not necessarily the Muhammad Hijab side, but they're all opposed to. They're almost all opposed to her. So she got a certain number of likes on her when she has like millions of followers or something like that, and she did not get a lot of likes for such a big account. And the likes she did get seemed to be from, basically political leftists, not Muslims. The Muslims were railing against her. And here's Muhammad Hijab, who got more likes than she did, even though he has a far smaller Twitter presence. But he said, whether or not Ilhan Omar and Linda Sarsour are Muslims or not, they are hitherto to be ostracized from the Muslim community entirely. They do not represent Muslims, and we the Muslims henceforth disown these two, and hereby shun any Muslim who agrees with their general stances. So he's saying, hey, not only Ilhan Omar and Linda Sarsour, but anyone who agrees with their general stances on these issues is to be shunned by the entire Muslim community. And he is getting a lot of likes. People are overwhelmingly approving what he said there. And so, yeah, you got some major cracks forming in one of the strangest political alliances of all time.
Yes. And another one showed in Britain, where they're desperately afraid, as we have discussed just this evening, desperately afraid of being called Islamophobic and let thousands of girls be victimized for that imperative. Nonetheless, in Britain, the independent advisor on Islamophobia to the UK government, Kari Asim, was just fired last Saturday because he endorsed the campaign that I believe we discussed last time. He endorsed the campaign to ban the film Lady of Heaven as blasphemous. And British authorities were amazed that he was against the freedom of speech, even though this same gentleman, Kari Asim, has spoken out in favor of restrictions on speech in the past, particularly to outlaw what he considers to be blasphemy against Islam. And so they really didn't have any reason to be surprised at all. But they are so self-deceived that British officials were stunned that Kari Asim endorsed the banning of this film. And oddly enough, he was actually fired from his position as the UK's advisor on Islamophobia. And I just want to address Boris Johnson, who I know is watching tonight. I am available to take that job, Boris. And so if you really want an advisor on Islamophobia, I'm offering my services now absolutely free of charge.
And I'll be the assistant to the what'd you call it?
The UK official advisor on Islamophobia. Yes.
I'll be the assistant to the UK advisor on Islamophobia. I'll also do it free of charge.
So, Boris, you can save the British taxpayers millions of pounds, and you can get the job done right.
Yeah,
for absolutely free. How can you pass that up?
Yeah, you save millions of bucks and tons of embarrassment when you don't have to deal with nonsense like with this guy. And by the way, notice people aren't as disturbed by things like banning a film or getting a film banned as they should be. If you look at what happened, you have a movie. I'm still going to watch. I'm going to try to watch it by next week because I do want to do a review. But you have a film that's just, its crime is that it's from the Shia perspective on some of the events that happened. It's a Shia perspective on these things. And Sunnis lose their minds. The Shia view cannot be represented in the West. And they get it. Like, only Sunnis get to speak. It's like, where are you getting this idea from? But it's amazing because they've been successful in getting the film banned from theaters and so on. And it's just Shias don't have a right to speak. It's still built in their minds. They're these inferior beings who have to be wiped off the planet or at least subjugated. And how dare they try to speak in the UK? And then you get people who are, government officials jumping on board with this nonsense.
Where'd they get that idea that they were inferior beings with no right to speak? Where on earth did they learn such a thing?
Must have heard it from some Amish people.
Must have. Okay, another one in a similar vein. Actually, this is just idiot infidel story. Alban Gervais was a doctor in France, and he was out in front of the Catholic school that his children attended, and a man named Muhammad came up to him and cut his throat in the name of Allah. Here again, I should have asked you where he cut him, but in any case, I expect you would have known. You have this amazing ability to guess. Mm-hmm. And in any case, he cut his throat. He said he did it in the name of Allah. And that was not too long ago. There were several masses held to pray for his soul. And on the schedule of this parish, St. Rose of Lima, St. Jerome, St. Joseph, I don't know, there are all these different names here. So I guess it's St. Jerome, maybe several parishes, that's it. Oh, I see. There was a mass for him at St. Jerome on the 12th at the 10th hour, at 10 a.m. And then at 6 p.m., there was a mass at St. Rose of Lima, also for the repose of the soul of Alban Gervais. And in between, at the local park, there was a festive meeting of Christians and Muslims. And this was all listed in the local listings of upcoming activities, with the bitter irony being that you have the first mass for the man killed in the name of Allah, And then the next thing listed is the festive meeting of Christians and Muslims, and then listed the second mass for the man who was killed in the name of Allah by a man named Muhammad. And so it seems clear that the festive meeting of Christians and Muslims was, I would go out on a limb here and guarantee you that it was organized by the Christians and is presented as an attempt to pacify the Muslim community and make it feel welcome there in this area of France, with no regard whatsoever for the teachings of jihad violence that all too often result in things such as the murder of Alban Gervais. And I also can guarantee you that this festive meeting of Christians and Muslims will not do a single thing to prevent the next murder of a person in France by someone acting in the name of Allah.
Well, it could do something. It could help people lower their guard so it happens again effortlessly.
Indeed. That it could do.
A few minutes ago, we were talking about sort of cracks in the alliance between those on the global political left and all things Islamic, even though, I mean, if you just looked at what their official positions are, you would see them being on the exact opposite of the spectrum on certain issues. And yet they always manage to form an alliance, I would guess because they have common enemies that they both want to bring down. But did you see the issue, because I just made a video of it yesterday, the new Disney movie Lightyear, Pixar Disney?
I haven't seen anything. I was flying yesterday and I missed probably a lot of the news. I don't know what this is.
So you familiar with the Toy Story films? You've got a bunch of kids. Remember the Toy Story films? Buzz
Lightyear, he's the astronaut, right?
Yeah, he's a space ranger. I don't mean to correct you there, but yeah, Space Ranger is his official title. But yeah, so they made a new Pixar made a new movie called Lightyear, and it's about the origin. So in the Toy Story movies, Buzz Lightyear's a toy, but the toy is based on a movie, right? So the idea is you're seeing the movie that the toy was based on, and it's about the real Space Ranger, Buzz Lightyear, who this time is voiced by Chris Evans, the guy who plays Captain America in the Marvel films. Well, after the issue in Florida between Disney and Ron DeSantis and so on, Disney decided to insert a lesbian kiss in the films. There's like no purpose. They just insert it in there. And it's like, I have no problem with, if you have a film and it has a gay storyline or something like that, but it's actually part of the story, that's one thing. It's weird how Disney just let's insert it in any place where it has nothing to do with anything and just to say that we did it. So
also, this is a children's film. Am I right?
Yeah, it should be. Yeah, it's a children's film. So anyway, Disney.
All right, I don't want to get off topic. Go ahead.
So Disney did this. Disney put that in there. And in the past, you may be aware, in the past, they've edited movies to make them safer for Muslim markets. Right? So they'll come up with modified versions of the movies so that they can be released in Saudi Arabia and so on. This time they refused because they knew everyone was watching to see if they're going to change it for Saudi Arabia, and they refused. So it got banned by 14 Muslim countries, right? So the film got banned by 14 Muslim countries. And then Chris Evans, in an interview, was being asked about the backlash against the film over the lesbian kiss. And he doesn't say that he's talking about Muslims. He doesn't say who he's talking about, but he just says about people who are opposed to having the kiss in a film. And he said, he goes, those people are idiots. He goes, but they're like dinosaurs. They're just going to die off. It's like, wait, what the heck did you just say? Did you just say Muslims are like dinosaurs and they're going to die off and they're idiots?
Is he getting Islamophobia charges or no?
No, he's totally fine right now. But that's what I mean with like the cracks forming, because I mean, we can't even. If you're Noop or Sharma, you can't even point out what a factual piece of information about what's in the Muslim sources. But you've got Chris Evans, because he's on their side, and he just called them all idiots. and he's fine so far. But it is interesting that I mean the movie's bombing at the box office. It's bombing. It's supposed to get like $120 million on its opening weekend. It's got around 50. It finished in second place its opening weekend. It's a Pixar movie, so it's flopping. But it is interesting that you're getting this rift again. Everywhere you look right now, you're getting this rift. It's between Islam and the left on LGBTQ issues, and I don't know. It's interesting to watch.
Another rift may form, has not yet formed, but may form in Sweden. And there we have Bassem Mahmoud, who is an Islamic preacher, an imam in Malmö, heavily Muslim area. And he gave a sermon in October 2020 in which he called Jews the offspring of pigs and apes. Now, of course, that's straight from the Quran. And so he is now on trial for hate speech. But he said he was just quoting the Quran. He said, when you read the Quran, you cannot change anything. He said he can't change his religion for the sake of the Jews. And so he's just quoting the Quran. The Quran says that Allah transformed the Jews into apes and pigs, which it most certainly does. Chapter 2, 63 to 65, chapter 5, 59 and 60, and chapter 7, 166. So what is Sweden going to do? It's going to be interesting to see. Because if they say that this is hate speech, then what do they do with all the other Muslims, all the other imams who might preach this? It's still in the Quran. They got millions of Qurans in Sweden. What are they going to do? And so I'm watching this case very closely.
Oh no, this is a massively important case, and I would love to see more of these guys use that defense. Say something that is directly from the Quran, and when someone says, "Hey, that's hate speech," then wait a minute, that's in the Quran. Did you, our leftist allies who want our votes, just call the Quran hate speech? And then see how quickly they change their tune. By the way, there was something similar years ago. You may remember this, but it was a bunch of Hollywood stars, like I think it was like Sylvester Stallone and a bunch of television and movie stars, signed a document condemning a document by Hamas. The document by Hamas, the relevant part, just said, and we will fight the Jews until they're hiding behind trees, and the tree says, "There's one hiding behind me, come and get him." And all these Hollywood celebrities signed this document condemning as hate speech this claim by Hamas, and no one noticed the fact that it's a direct quote from Muhammad. Yeah, you can see that. You can see that more. It's just weird. If they hear it from a person, they understand that's hate speech. But if as soon as you say, "Oh no, it's actually Muhammad who said that," that person's just repeating it. They're, diversity and different cultures. We can't. Who are we to judge what they say? Well,
who are we to judge? Speaking of who are we to judge, I think that we got to give the Idiotic Infidel of the Week award. You know, that would be a really good award, actually. There'd be heavy competition for it every week.
Yeah.
But the president of Ireland, Michael Higgins, and he was noting the mass murder of Christians in a church in Nigeria on Pentecost Sunday. Over 50 people were murdered. We talked about this last time. And he said that this was the consequences of climate change. Now, how climate change could possibly lead people to gun down people who were praying in a church, he did not bother to explain. But it's interesting to note that Bishop Jude Ayodeji Arogundade of Ondo in Nigeria, which is the area where this happened, he said very delicately, while thanking the Honorable Mr. Higgins for joining others to condemn the attack and offering his sympathy to the victims, his reasons for this gruesome massacre are incorrect and far-fetched. To suggest or make a connection between victims of terror and consequences of climate change is not only misleading, but also exactly rubbing salt to the injuries of all who have suffered terrorism in Nigeria. and he went on to explain why Mr. Higgins was so wrong. But no word, unfortunately, from Higgins walking back his ridiculous statement. But it seems likely that the sheer idiotic character of ascribing a massacre to climate change might also make some people question this alliance between the left and Islamic groups and start to wonder if maybe it is not wise to ally with these jihadis.
Yeah, that dope Higgins. I mean, this is what happens when people eat too many bowls of Lucky Charms and their diet isn't diverse enough. You know what I mean? See, now everyone, notice what I just did there. I completely made up some ridiculous cause of the man's behavior. Everyone would see that as completely idiotic. What? Lucky Charms? What? Right? That's exactly what we're making fun of him for doing, right? Oh, there was a terrorist attack down there? What am I against? I'm against climate change. Oh, it's because of climate change that those jihadis slaughtered all those Christians in their church service in the name of Allah. Gosh, man.
Yep. Probably more Guinness than Lucky Charms, but anyway. All right, we're coming up to the end. I've got quite a few more things. I think I should just go through a lot of these very quickly because they are important to mention since this is, after all, This Week in Jihad. And once again, we have 2 weeks to catch up on. Very common story out of Pakistan on this ongoing Nupur Sharma rage. Muslims vandalized a Hindu temple, threw stones at one of the idols therein. And a very similar thing happened in Afghanistan, where a Sikh temple was attacked in retaliation for the insult to Muhammad, which is really getting kind of far-fetched because no Sikhs were involved, but this is the logic of the jihad. In the idiotic infidels category, we have Michelle Wu, the mayor of Boston, Massachusetts, who appointed Yusufi Vali as her deputy chief of staff. He is the former head of the Islamic Society of Boston, the mosque that has Sheikh Yusuf al-Qaradawi, who has praised Hitler on its board and has recommended that Muslims beat their wives in accord with Quran 434. Jihad terrorists, including the Tsarnaev brothers, who are the Boston Marathon bombers, Tariq Mahana, Afia Siddiqui, Ahmed Abu Samra, the Islamic State social media guru. They all went to the Islamic Society of Boston. But that's how you move up in society nowadays. If the mayor of Boston had been looking for a chief of staff, deputy chief of staff, Yusufi Vali is fine, but she would never have dreamed of appointing, for example, David Wood, because David Wood opposes jihad violence, and that would make him out of bounds for the chief of staff position. Back to jihad attacks in Mozambique. ISIS, the Islamic State, murdered 8 people in raids on 6 Christian villages. Many stories out of Nigeria: 2 churches attacked, 3 people murdered, many abducted. Of course, the abductions are discussed in the Quran and delineated by very specific rules in Islamic law, saying that you can kill, ransom, enslave, or free outright the captives based on what's best for Islam. Also in Nigeria, a prostitute was murdered when her customer found that she had a Quran in her room. The prostitution was okay as long as he thought she was an infidel, because that kind of thing is allowed under the passages regarding the captives of the right hand or temporary marriage. But when he discovered she was a Muslim, then she was guilty of fornication and thus had to be killed. The attacks also, let's see, Nigeria, 37 people killed. In Pakistan, a Christian declined to convert to Islam, was falsely accused of blasphemy and imprisoned. In Austria, a jihad plot was foiled for a massacre at the Vienna Marathon, where there are 30,000 people running. Also in France, there was another attack foiled that was intending to massacre a large part of the population. In Germany, a Muslim migrant pushed a 63-year-old woman onto the train tracks and then turned and kicked a dog. Of course, we know how Muhammad hated dogs. Burkina Faso, 10 killed. There was another one in Burkina Faso. I can't find it right now, but in any case, there was another. A Palestinian Islamic scholar called on Muslims to declare jihad against Hindus and eradicate the Hindus because of Nupur Sharma saying that Muhammad married a child. And 35 Christian pastors abducted or killed in Nigeria over the last 17 months. In France, a teacher asked a Muslim girl to take off her hijab, and now she has been inundated with threats of murder, death threats, that is. So the jihad continues apace, David, this week, and we'll see. Maybe this will be the end of it, and there will be no jihad to report next week.
Yeah, every week I mean, the assumption is, so you've got this tiny, tiny minority of extremists who just absorbed the wrong idea from some source, but they keep locking those guys up. So, I mean, they got to run out of jihadis. I mean, otherwise it's like there's something that keeps giving rise to more of them. No matter how many of them you lock up, there's something that's giving rise to more and more jihadis.
Maybe they've gotten hold of some Islamophobic literature somehow.
Yeah, they must be. They must be going to your site, and they must have gotten they must have gotten the critical Quran.
It's all my fault, David.
Yeah, I know what they did. I know exactly what they did. Someone got a copy of the critical Quran, then built a time machine powered by 1.21 gigawatts of Islamophobia, went back in time 1,400 years, gave everyone a copy of the critical Quran, and that convinced people for the next 14 centuries to wage jihad and slaughter unbelievers in the name of Allah. It's the only possible explanation, because otherwise it would have to come from the actual Quran, and we know that's impossible.
Couldn't have happened. You're right. It must be my fault.
All right, ladies and gentlemen. Well, thanks, Robert, for joining us again, and we'll see if we're right that there will be no jihad between now and next week. We'll see. But if there is, I predict that it will involve. I predict that it will involve shouts of Allahu Akbar, and
Indeed.
No, indeed. Bye, everyone.
No.